Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you could join us this evening. This meeting is an initiative of the Community Relations Committee of the Board of Education, which comprises of Elizabeth Conway, Carol Badowski, and Virginia White, and myself, Shivi Madhukar. I'm the chair of the committee, and we hope to get your voices heard today. We are grateful to Dr. Bragan, who's not obligated to attend this meeting, but he takes out time every time. So, very thankful for that. And we have with us Dr. Aldereri, who's also there with us every time. And thank you to Ralph Barca, who does all the technical stuff. And just to give a bit of a background, Community Relations is one of the various committees of the Board of Education. This year, we've been meeting regularly. We are grateful to online technology such as Zoom, because of which we are able to get more people to participate. Since there's no real precedence, the members of this committee decided to put their heads together to brainstorm on how we could effectively serve our community through this committee. Obviously, the ultimate goal is to get better and better as a school district. And then we came up with this idea: how about asking the people to provide their input? And that might be the critical first step. So that's exactly what we plan to do. While this meeting is not specifically about school opening, this meeting is about getting, as I said, your voices heard, what you feel. So if that's what is on your mind, that's what we're going to discuss. I have received many questions via email and through social media, but we'll first give the opportunity to folks if they would like to ask questions live. But even before that, I would like to give an opportunity to our Community Relations Committee Board of Education members if they would like to say something. So I would start from the right, and I'll start with Virginia White.
Hi, I'd like to welcome you all back again. I hope your summer went well. I hope you are well. I know you have many, many questions, so I'm not going to stay on here long. Please feel free to ask. We're here to help if we can. Thank you.
Carol.
Okay. Welcome to a brand new year in today's world of learning in our schools. We have all learned so much about what really matters in education and what is fun or nice, but not actually vital to learning. Our teachers and students have learned so many different ways to learn, teach, and grow as thinkers and doers in today's world. The world changes every day, and we have learned how to grow and learn along with it. Hopefully today is going to be the best year yet. Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Welcome, everyone. I just want to thank you for joining us. The purpose of this committee is to benefit you and the board to be able to relate to one another, ask questions, make suggestions, and go from there. And hopefully this is a good time prior to the school opening. I know there are dissenting opinions as to how we go about this, but as long as the governor keeps mandating what we are to do, we really have no choice. So we'll move forward unless things change. But in the meantime, we'll make the best of a good situation. We've got a great district, and I have full confidence in our teachers and our parents that this will be a positive year. Thank you.
So the format will be, you can either raise your hand or type in the chat, and we will, take the questions on a first come, first serve basis. So I guess, Dr. Bragan, the first question is, one second. Will Edison Youth Recreation Basketball be able to use the schools this year?
Yes. We already had some requests from recreation departments that we, last year, we obviously had those restrictions. Those restrictions are not in place for this year. So outside agencies, not only just the recreation department, but some other schools that use this and religious groups that use the schools on the weekends. The facilities will be open for their use.
Okay. I think the second question is, sixth graders will not be vaccinated. Delta variant is prevalent. Concerned about the safety of the kids. How will disinfection thing be done? Buses and facilities be done?
Yeah, well, I think most people understand that when the executive orders all expired in July, the opportunity for children to attend schools remotely ended. And absent that state of emergency by the governor or another executive.
I would request everyone to mute their mic.
Absent that, we don't have an opportunity.
Okay, I muted her.
We don't have an opportunity for even to permit that, as I know all the Board of Education members know, but not everyone in the public does, that previous board meeting, the Board of Education passed a resolution requesting that the governor would permit us to allow remote schooling as an option for those that chose that. And that there's been no difference or change from the governor's office. So until that happens, there's no opportunity for us to provide that as an option for any parents. So we do understand that still children under 12 are not available to get vaccinated. At this point, we're not mandating any students get vaccinated, although we strongly encourage those that are eligible, as well as staff members, to get vaccinated. The governor just passed some legislation that requires our teachers to either be vaccinated by October, Dr. Alderelli,
18.
October 18th, or to get tested on a weekly basis. As a matter of fact, this afternoon, Dr. Alderelli and I met with our association, Edison Township Education Association leadership, to discuss how we would implement that to everyone's satisfaction.
The next question is, what is the procedure for kids when they have to be quarantined? How will they learn if they have to stay home for 2 weeks? Got it. I muted myself.
Dr. Alderelli, you want to touch on the quarantine questionnaire?
Sure. So for any student that is unvaccinated, the quarantine timeframe is 14 days, as you stated. We've currently working with building principals as well as members of the teaching staff to provide supplemental instruction during that timeframe. The timeframe is going to be after school. We talked about providing that option virtually, obviously, so that we can get that ball up and running really quickly so that there's no loss in instructional time.
Mhm. All right, the next question is, what HVAC changes were made to improve ventilation at the high schools? Any changes, if at all?
The HVAC systems at many of our schools are older, right? Some of our schools were built 70 years ago, and some 50, 60 years. So those HVAC systems as a whole typically are older than what we would normally experience in our homes. But what we would love to do is update them all, right? And have air conditioning and new HVAC with the greatest and the latest in infiltration and things like that. But that's not a feasible option in the immediate future. But what we have done with every ventilation system, as well as any air conditioning units, the screens and the, what's the word I'm looking for? Not the vents, the filters have all been cleaned. They've also been sprayed with I forget the name of it, but it's an antimicrobial spray that kills viruses, including the COVID-19 virus, for up to 90 days. So we do feel that making those additions and making sure the filters are updated and cleaned on a regular basis will help us mitigate as best we can with the systems that we do have.
Dr. Bragan, this is one question that a parent sent to me earlier. And I think this question many other people might have. And if your child has a severe health condition and a vaccine is not available yet because of age, is there a way that child can actually learn remotely, or like a doctor's note? And if yes, then how is that child provided education?
That's a great question. As I said earlier, for the most part, students are not allowed the option of remote instruction. However, as if when there was no COVID infection in our community, medically fragile students and students that were unable to attend school due to medical conditions provided documentation due to their condition from their own physician that then has to get, according to the state statute, has to get evaluated by our own school physician. If that meets that threshold, those students are afforded the option of home instruction,
Okay.
which for a typically developing student would be 5 hours of home instruction a week. And for those students with special needs, it would be 10 hours.
Okay. So like just 5 hours? And
That's
not-
all home instruction
okay,
is. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not the same as your regular instruction. It's not a 7.5-hour school day. And that's why, for two reasons. One, it's limited to those students that really are medically fragile.
Mhm.
And because the education from 6 through 16 in New Jersey is compulsory. So to allow someone to deviate from that, it's not an easy thing to do. It requires their own physician with a documented medical indication that they cannot participate in public school. And then the school physician has to then verify that.
Okay, so now I'm seeing a lot of people who have their hands raised. So let's just start from the left of the screen and we'll go with Ranjini first. Ranjini, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. So what are the plans to in case if there are any situations or any incidents in school district, what are the plans to communicate to the parents? Is it coming from the school level or the district level? How will that be communicated if there are any incidents? Thank you.
Dr.
I'm not
Bragan.
sure what communication you asked for, but the majority of communication should come from the building level, right? Any issues that may be related to, I guess you're asking about a COVID exposure in the school system or something like that, typically comes from the building level, which would most likely be the principal. If there's something that's more global that requires a input from at a district level, that would come from my office most likely, and it could also come from Dr. Aldarelli's office, who Dr. Aldarelli deals with a lot of the COVID implications for personnel and things like that.
Judy McQuillan. Can you unmute yourself? We can't hear you. Judy, we can't hear you. I don't know what's going on.
Not on mute.
Wait.
Let me see. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you, but very, very feeble voice right now.
All right, I'll speak very loud. Can you hear me now? Sorry. I have a question about busing. I received an email from one of my students today about busing. I know that busing is an issue. They sent me a copy of the bus pass, and the bus pass said be in front of your house 45 minutes before school starts. So I sent back the time that school starts. And then we were told that the children can be on the bus for up to 90 minutes. So most of the children, well, I teach special needs. So most of the kids that are bused across town would be the kids that are on the bus for up to 90 minutes. But for kindergarten and preschool, if they're waiting for 45 minutes outside their home, plus 90 minutes on the bus, that's over 2 hours for 2.5 hours of class. Is there anything we can do to make it a little bit less time on the bus? I know buses are an issue.
Dr. Bragan?
Sure, we'll take a look at that. You know, the 45 minutes before the pickup time is standard that we put out on the bus passes for the first couple of days of school, just because we don't want any students to obviously miss the bus if they get out there a little later or a little earlier. If they're not out there earlier and the bus comes a little bit earlier than anticipated. So I don't envision that the child will be out there 45 minutes before on a regular basis. On the first day, that might not be a bad idea. I'm imagining a preschool student or kindergarten students out there with mom or dad or their guardian anyway. So we just want to make sure on the first day or two, when the bus drivers are getting acclimated to the routes and knowing how many students at each stop and how long it's going to take for them to pick it up, to err on the side of caution and be a little bit earlier. As far as 90 minutes on the bus, I don't know where anywhere in town it's going to take you 90 minutes to get from one side to the other. So I think that's an overestimation, but we will take a look at that. Obviously, we don't want any children on the bus for 90 minutes, especially our youngest students. So we will definitely take a look at that. Again, I think they might have just erred on the side of caution and saying it could be that long. Even with all the traffic in Edison, 90 minutes seems exorbitant. Even if you were coming from up by MLK all the way down to Lindenau, I don't think that would take 90 minutes, but we will take a look at that.
I'm going to go to Tarun now. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you, everybody. So my question is, so my daughter Anika, she's going to start kindergarten this year, and we had filled the online application form and sent all the registration documents on August 5th. And I know school is opening on September 1st. So we haven't heard back anything on the registration yet. And I have called numerous times and sent emails, but haven't got any response yet. So just wondering, like, just couple of days left to school start. I'm not sure like how it's going to happen.
So Tarun, just one thing I will add before I give it to Dr. Bragan, that we have a new system that we have actually devised this year. It's called the Parent Help Desk. And you can go online and you can actually create a ticket. And we have a specific parent help desk for enrollment issues, and you can actually enter your information. And somebody would get back to you on that. So just avail of that opportunity. And for everybody else who's on the call today, if you go to the website, you'll see something called the Parent Help Desk. It's a terrific resource, and we have organized it by various topics. So you should definitely go and raise a ticket. So because that also allows the administration to monitor issues in real time. What are the issues being raised? What is resolved? What's not resolved?
I actually raised a ticket through that system also, and I never got an email confirmation about the ticket. My wife also raised the ticket, and it said that you will get an email with the confirmation, and we never got an email.
Dr. Bragan, you want to add something?
Yeah, at this point, we will look into that and get back to you. But for the short run, please shoot me an email and mention that, we went over this at the meeting today, and I'll take a look at it tomorrow. I apologize for that inconvenience, and we'll look into it. But send me an email, and I'll try to get back to it tomorrow and give you some answers there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Padmaja Chinta? Can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Hi. Thank you. So from what was just shared, I understand that, for quarantine students, there won't be any hybrid option and they would be getting 5 hours of instruction time in a week. I have 2 follow-up questions on that. One, could you explain how this is going to work for high school students who have different subject levels? Are they going to keep the same teachers or different teachers? And 2, how is it going to work in case of mass quarantine where the whole class, for example,
Board
goes
of
to
Education
quarantine?
meeting అవుతుంది.
You want to answer that, Ms. Madam?
Dr. Bragan, why don't you answer?
Yeah.
that question?
Good question. What we're planning to do is that it's actually supplemental instruction for the home instruction, which would basically take place with after the school day. It would be 1 or more of their teachers or our teachers in the building, like we normally would do for home instruction. After their workday, that teachers volunteer to do that service. It would be via a video such as Zoom or Google Meet or one of those other devices. And yeah, it's not the best instruction, but it is, students will have to have some level of independence in keeping up with their work. And this will basically be the teacher providing that support at the end of the school day and finding time for them to do that. It's not ideal. We understand that. These aren't ideal situations we're dealing with. For elementary students, we had the discussion today. If there's more than 1 student or, a class of students, should that happen, that they have to be quarantined, we may do an entire class where we operate in that capacity. And what may happen during the school day is, while there won't be a hybrid instruction with a back and forth from the teacher, we may be able to have the camera be live so the students can watch what's going on and, and at the end of the day, catch up with the teacher on an individual time and really provide that supplemental support.
I would request everyone to please mute their mics. Okay, so the next person is Preeti Singh. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I'll ask the question on my wife's behalf. So I understand the request to the governor was sent for the option of virtual. Do you expect a response back in a certain amount of time? And if you're given for this hybrid option, and if you're given this authority, how much time are we talking about to make that a option for students and parents to use that? And finally, and let me just ask my third question, which is, I'm sure we're taking precautions on desk spacing and all that, but basically, throughout the day, whether it's lunch, gym, whatever, all the, have we made the adjustments so that we're providing, maximum distance with masks, given we are all subject to this governor's decision on no remote learning? Can you please comment and answer that? Thank you.
Elizabeth, do you want to talk about the first part?
Actually, this afternoon, I watched the governor's conference, and he actually said that there was a number of districts that applied and requested that they be able to do remote learning. And as far as I understood, none were granted.
And then
Okay.
we have a second question on social distancing.
Yeah. Well, kudos to your wife for formulating an exceptional question. Regarding the social distancing, as Mrs. Conway said and Mrs. Matagor, you asked a specific question whether I was anticipating a response from the governor. I am not. And I don't think any district would get a specific response because I would be treating one school differently than the other. So if there was a change, it would be more global, and that option would be afforded to all schools, public, private, and charter, I would suspect. The second part of your question regarding, I believe, social distancing, we can keep 6 feet of social distancing throughout the school day. If you look at the documentation, which is on our website for the road forward, that was published in June by the Department of Education, it says when practicable and if at all possible, you'd want to adhere to those parameters. And we really can't for a large portion of the day. When we can, we will. Class and desk, when we can, will be separated. We will have our elementary desks when we can, all facing forward so that the students are facing in the same direction, so as to mitigate the amount of spread that could happen from the virus, because we do know, as we learned over the course of the last 18 months, it's an aerosol virus. It doesn't live on surfaces. That's not how it typically is spread. So we want to try to limit that interaction. Students are required, the Mass Executive Order 251, to wear masks while on transportation. That was actually required before the mask mandate, that on all buses, students, vaccination status or not, were required to wear masks. And now they're also required to wear them in schools, as is staff members. There's a few exceptions. Some of those exceptions are during times of eating, obviously. There are times of exception for music instructional classes, when students are doing some anaerobic or aerobic activities that requires heavy physical exertion. They can relieve the mask when they're outside. So there are those options, but as far as maintaining 6 feet of social distancing during the school day, that's not possible in almost any of our schools. One of the things we did do is in the elementary level, where there's typically 2 lunches, which really equates to 4 lunch periods when you combine lunch and recess. We expanded it last year to be 3 periods, and that will continue this year too, to have less students in the lunchrooms and provide a quicker way to get the food and to eat. So we have less opportunities for students to be in one space when they don't have masks on while they're eating.
Dr. Bragan, how about water fountains? Will those be open? And if not, then will kids be allowed to carry their own water bottles?
Yeah, the water fountains we were required to close those last year. That has since been lifted. So we'll have the water fountains will be open. Many of our newer water fountains are the bottle fountains where the kids fill up their bottles. But students have always been allowed to have water bottles, and they should. If that's an issue in anyone's classroom, please contact the teacher and the building principal. If not, contact myself. Students can and will, if they want to, have their own water bottles in the classroom.
Okay, and what about book bags for the middle and the high school?
Book bags are an issue with the hallways and the overcrowd, and I know they tried to limit that because the kids would wind up taking their books for the whole day and not go back to their lockers. I'll look at that individually. I don't remember that specifically decision we made regarding middle and high school. I would defer to the building principals on what their perception was on that. But we can use lockers now, and they're not banned. So I would think that would be the same as it was before.
Okay, and just one follow-up question I saw in the chat. If the student is only getting 1 hour of instruction per day, especially a high school child or a middle school child, then how would the various subjects be, how would you educate them on the various subjects? What would be the division of time? Have we hashed that out?
Yeah,
yet?
it's going to be very difficult. I mean, what that probably equates to is 1 subject a week that you're going to have the teacher instruct you on, and the rest of the time you'll be doing a lot of the work on your own. And then, having that 1 hour period with the teacher to catch up and answer any questions you may have. It's not an ideal situation by no means. We would agree with that. We didn't talk about this at the secondary, but I think I said earlier, we mentioned it at the elementary level, that the opportunity to have the cameras, as you see here, they're in every classroom, perhaps just leave them running during the day, where the student at home will not be interacting with the teacher, because that hybrid instruction was very difficult for both parties. But they will have access to the content that's going on in the classroom to follow along when they can. And then at the end of the day, when they have that home instruction period that's scheduled, to use that as a catch-up.
And the only thing that we have to hope for is if it's a quarantine, you're talking 14 days, but hopefully it's only 10 school days. It's a short-term thing rather than when a child was really homesick, it could go on for weeks on end.
Correct.
So hopefully it's just a shortened period of time that we have to really worry about it.
Yeah. And what about, do they have to show a negative test when they come back?
Dr. Alder,
So if for somebody that tests
Quarantine.
positive,
Quarantine.
right? So for an individual that tests positive, they do not need to show a negative test to return. They do need to quarantine for a total of 14 days. They're allowed to return after those 14 days, as long as they are fever-free for 24 hours and are showing an improvement in symptoms.
Okay. So I see a lot of other hands raised, but I'm going to go first to the people who've not asked questions. So I'm going to go to Randeep. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi. My son is asthmatic. He's going to third grade. So I just want to know what can be the reason they are not allowing the hybrid instruction. Hybrid the instructions are like when the kids are, those kids who wants to stay in the school, they want to go in person, they can stay in person and there will be social distancing. And other kids who wants to stay remote, they can stay remote too. And my another question is, like you just mentioned that so many districts appealed for remote instructions to governor. So I want to know, did Edison district appeal for it too? And also, what about the water breaks? I can understand lunch breaks might be outside, but what about the water breaks? Kids have to take off their mask in the classroom, or it's not possible, like teachers are taking them out like every half an hour to take water break or something. So.
Sure. We said this, I think, several times during this meeting, if not repeatedly over the last month. There is no remote instruction option. We, as a public school system in New Jersey, do not have the option to do that. Education is compulsory in New Jersey for students aged 6 through 16. The only reason remote instruction was permitted over the last year and a half was because of the governor's executive orders and the declared state of emergency. Absent that directive from the governor and the Department of Education guidance, we are not permitted by law to offer remote instruction to anyone. So I understand people's frustration about not having a choice. I understand the desire to want to do that for some people's perception to protect their children and keep them safe from the COVID-19 variant, especially the Delta variant, now that it seems to spread more easily. But absent an executive order or a declared state of emergency from the governor, any school district in the state of New Jersey, whether they want to or not, doesn't have the option to offer remote and a hybrid instruction. It's not permitted. And I understand, and the board understands that. The board passed a resolution requesting us to have that option, but we don't at this point. If that changes, we will revisit that. I think one of the questions earlier was how quickly could we adjust if that option was permitted? And I think we approved for the last 18 months, we could adjust fairly quickly.
Okay, we're going to go to Madhushri next. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi. First of all, thanks for taking the question and thanks for this evening's conversation. I have two questions actually, but one of the key concerns that people have is, if kids have to go into quarantine and it's, a 14-day loss of instruction and a meaningful education, right? Is there an option where there is an ability for the teachers' classes to get recorded? I understand that's not the primary mode, But would that option provide a more continued format of education for kids if they have to be home 14 days? So can the classes be recorded and can that be provided for that? That's one question. And I think the second question may be more middle school focused and probably more for the unvaccinated group of sixth graders is, I know that the common format is moving classes with every lecture. Is there a way where we could minimize that, where kids actually have assigned classrooms, maybe a couple times moving around, but the teachers actually can move into the classes, so you minimize the whole contact and social distancing concern that is currently for a lot of parents?
Dr. Bragan?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept that we could perhaps look into about the middle school, about the teachers switching classes as opposed to the students. We could look into that. There's some logistical concerns with that, with scheduling, but that's something we could look into. Regarding the recorded classes, even during the periods when we were fully remote, I don't believe we recorded classes. But as I said earlier, I think if somebody is quarantined and we haven't ironed out the kinks yet, but we could have that student observe the class that he or she is missing. And if they wanted to watch it and be a part of the education as it's progressing synchronously when the lesson's taking place, and then use that home instruction period at the end of the day to catch up and to facilitate any questions or concerns they had, that's something that we could definitely look into.
So there's just one thing I want to say. I mean, I see a lot of hands being raised right now. And just in case we're not able to get to all of you, please do send us an email. And maybe we can put like an FAQ on the website or something like that and try to get all your questions answered. I would now ask Amit to unmute himself.
Hi, thanks for taking this call. So my question is regarding like kids who are 12 and below, they are not vaccinated. And if in case as parents, if we decide to do homeschooling, like let's say I mean like right now, the word on the street is by December or January, we can expect vaccination for 12 and below. So till the time it is safe, is there any process that we have to follow so that we follow the curriculum? And since it is absolutely not allowed to go ahead with virtual classroom session, if as parents, if we decide to do homeschooling, what would be the process to re-enroll, let's say when there is vaccination is back in place?
Good question. Homeschooling is an option. It's always an option for families if they choose to do so. But basically, when you homeschool your child, you are disenrolling them from the public schools. If you want to come back to the public school at some point, as you said, as the word on the street per se is that a vaccine is available in December, if that's true and people want to take advantage and then are more comfortable returning to school, you would have to go through the entire enrollment process again and have your child re-enrolled in the school. And then we would obviously welcome all of our students as we normally would with open arms.
Just one small note that if your question has already been answered, by don't ask the same question again. We want to get to as many topics as we can this evening. So the next person is Neeraj Srivastava. Please unmute yourself.
Hi. My question is around we have all been talking about kids being quarantined, kids not being well, right? But what happens if someone at home is not well? It could be parents, it could be someone else living with them, right? And you do not want the kids go just for the community's sake, because again, you know, someone is sick, your kids, although they're fine, they might be potential carriers, might not, right? But you might decide not to let them go. Now, how is the number of sick days off going to be counted on the kids, right? Because again, if the kid is sick, you would get a medical note and stuff, right? But what if someone else in the family is sick? How do you manage such quarantines?
I would encourage all our parents, as we did for the last year and a half, if that's the situation where someone was exposed or somebody is sick at home, and we fear that it may be the COVID-19, that you would indeed keep your child home and adhere to the quarantine expectations. If at the end of the school year, your child exceeds the number of permitted absences, we would definitely take that into consideration as an extenuating circumstance. If there was any documentation that someone in the family was sick, that would be helpful to maintain that. But if that wasn't the case and you couldn't provide that, we would research that and do the best it can and deal with it on an individual basis. In in the world we're living in today in 2021, we don't want anyone who's been exposed to a family member or has been in close proximity to somebody that's a positive COVID-19 case to indeed come to school where they could expose and perhaps infect a great many other people. So we would encourage you to err on the side of caution. If we get to that point where your son or daughter has exceeded the number of absences, we would then work with the principal and try to deal with all those on an individual basis to make that determination.
The next person is Heather Casey. Can you unmute yourself, Heather?
Hi, yes, thanks for taking the question. Two questions. One is the protocol in place for if classrooms would need to quarantine or schools. And two, the updated road forward recommendations at the state level suggest that as long as kids are wearing masks the right way, that even if they are in close proximity to someone who tests positive, they may not need to quarantine. I'm just curious, since I know those are recommendations and not requirements, what the district's position is on both of those.
Dr. Bragan.
Yeah, great idea. Hopefully we won't have entire classes that quarantine, but if that is the situation, that would be, as we said before, we would encourage that teacher, if the class is quarantined, most likely so will the teacher be, to provide that instruction at the elementary level via remote fashion, because everybody's quarantined and that would be our home instruction. As I said, the home instruction would be virtual home instruction because obviously we don't want staff members going into somebody's house that's quarantined for either exposure or for an illness. So that would occur and could potentially occur in that situation where the entire class is quarantined. That home instruction could possibly take place as a class level because everybody's in the same boat for that hopefully short period of time. On the road forward, I'm sorry, it does say if there's a properly fitting mask that even if you were close proximity, you would not necessarily have to quarantine. All those situations we review whenever there's been an exposure or a positive case with our Department of Health. We're fortunate Edison Township has their own Department of Health. And we would look at what the expectations are working together with, again, our Department of Health and determining how large a scope that would be for those students that need to be quarantined. Last year, when we brought all the students back, especially in March 1st and then in April 19th, when they came to those students that were in person for a full day, whenever there was a positive case in one of our classrooms, we wound up quarantining the entire classroom. That exceeded the expectations for Department of Health. Just so you have some point of reference.
I would request everyone who's already asked one question to please lower their hand so we can get to maximum people. So the next person that I see on my screen who has not spoken yet is Elizabeth Talke. Can you unmute yourself?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, two questions. Number one, is there going to still be weekly testing available for the staff members? And last year we also used it for some of the sports teams when necessary for COVID testing. And my second question I was asked to ask is, in the middle school and the high school for gym classes, will the students, the expectations of using the locker rooms and changing for gym, what's going to be the protocol with that? Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Dr. Bragan.
Yeah. The locker rooms are not closed as they were last year for sporting or for phys ed. So students can and will be expected to change. Regarding the weekly testing, we do have that set up in place with our same provider that we had last year. We reviewed that today with the leadership of the Edison Township Teachers Education Association. And as I think we said earlier, at some point in October, if a teacher cannot support that he or she has been vaccinated, they are required to have weekly testing. So we will try to facilitate as best we can on our campus. And of course, open it up to students, obviously with parent permission, who want to get tested as well.
Okay, the next person on my screen is LS. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking the question. This is Lolita here. Take the video off.
Hi,
Hi.
Lolita, go on.
Hi, Shivi. Thanks for taking the call, and thanks to the whole board. I had a couple of questions. One is regarding, I heard about class quarantine for middle school and elementary, but how does this work for high school when students are moving from classroom to classroom? And another thing is if any student gets COVID, is there a way to inform the parents without keep in mind all the privacy issues that a particular homeroom or a particular period has had a COVID situation, because then how do we monitor our kids? Since they're moving from classroom to classroom in high school, it's very difficult to say who's got it from where. And is there a cutoff number where you would say, okay, more than 20 students have gotten in the school, so we're going to go virtual or not? That's one question. And second, I also heard about this instruction if you're quarantined. What happens to high school with the various testings and project work that they do together? Is that left to the teachers to take into account, keeping in mind all the marking period? And since high school is important for college and GPA and all that, how is that going to be done? And I would really appreciate it if the school could send a detailed letter, especially for high school, I believe, since they move from class to classroom, and it's a whole different ball game, high school, on how this whole thing is going to be addressed, to let us know about exams, the tests, and if the whole class, if someone gets COVID, how that's going to be, how we're going to monitor. Do we monitor our kids? How do we know, what to do? And that's my question.
Thank you, Lolita. Dr. Bragan.
Yeah, I'll answer that as best I can, and then I'll ask Dr. Alderelli to fill in on anything I missed. Regarding, is there a cutoff number when, the entire school would be closed or would be totally remote? There is no option to go totally remote. I've said this, I think, 5 times this evening. That's not an option. It's not permissible by the governor, by the state of New Jersey, or by the Department of Education. So that's not an option. When someone is exposed, we would do what we've done last year. If you were what's considered a close contact, which is 15 minutes or more within a 6 feet area, 15 minutes or more within a 6 feet area of the student. And I think, as Dr. Casey said, that really means without a mask being on. But we last year considered, even if you were wearing a mask that was a close contact, you would receive notification that you indeed, your child was a close contact and would be required to quarantine. If your child was not a close contact, you would receive notification that there was a positive case within the school. And while your child was not in close contact, please be more vigilant for symptomatic behaviors that may indicate a positive COVID issue. Regarding individual tests and exams, again, that's on an individual basis within the classroom, I would imagine. And if this happens, you could always contact myself or the school administration, that nobody is going to be penalized because they were either COVID-19 positive or they were required to quarantine, that they weren't afforded an opportunity to make up such assessments or tests. Dr. Alderelli.
Just to echo those pieces, I think one of them was, maybe can we identify which classroom or grade level? There are privacy issues with regards to that, and student privacy rights. What we can say is that if your child is exposed, or if there is a positive case within the school building, you will be notified of that. There'll be a detailed letter. A conversation usually takes place with the building principal or school nurse or the vice principal at that time, which identifies, the length of quarantine and any recommendations for COVID testing. But as far as kind of pinpointing it to a specific area or grade level or school, those are things that, too specific with regards to identifying students' privacy issues.
Can I just request everyone to please mute yourselves? Unless you're asked to unmute, please keep yourselves muted. The next person is Rashmi Sharma. Can you unmute yourself? Rashmi, are you there? Okay, we're going to move to the next person, Hari Haran. Can you please unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Hari Haran. I have one question. Like, do you have any threshold level, okay, beyond which this number, like if it goes in a class, like then the class will be asked to go to remote. Likewise, if 10 classes in they have a COVID cases of this many number, like do you have any plans such like threshold level beyond which that number the school will go into a remote learning, or they will shut down the school, something like that? Or is it already in place, or are you planning to come up anything of that sort?
I believe this question was already answered. I would request you to watch the recording of this meeting. It should be available on our website tomorrow so that, we can address maximum number of questions that have not been heard. So we're going to move to the next person. And thank you for your question, Hariharan. And you'll be able to see the answer when you log on to the recording tomorrow. We're going to move on to Milli. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak. I have one concern because the elementary school, as you people, I'm hearing again and again that there is a law that you cannot decline and let the school go for remote or hybrid. But what is the safety measure? Because if the kid is infected and any of the family member has the loss in the family, who is going to take care of it? Because this Delta variant is not easy to handle. What I believe, what I'm seeing on my friends and in other schools, that's very, very important that if the child is the carrier and somehow it's coming to the house, anything happening, who is going to be responsible for that?
Thank you,
That's
Milli. Thank you, Milli, for your question. Quickly, Dr. Bragan, you want to address that?
Yeah, I mean, this whole pandemic is horrific, and it's impacted millions of people, some with devastating consequences, many in our community. So we don't question that there could be some significant impacts, but the idea that somehow myself, the Board of Education, our administrative team, a principal, or anyone else in the school system is somehow responsible for an illness, we can't be responsible. I'm not advocating anyone to spread COVID. I'm not trying to put anyone in a situation where they could be in harm's way. What we're doing is following the law. We don't have a choice to not offer instruction in person. We have parameters in place to do that as safely and as effectively as we can. From screenings that go home for parents every Sunday night that you check to make sure your child hasn't been exposed, isn't positive, doesn't have a fever, so on and so forth, to thermal scans when you walk into the building for temperatures, to mask wearing, to enforcement of wearing masks during the school day and on the buses, to enhanced cleaning, to the sanitization of the filters in our HVAC systems, to ensuring that we're doing everything we can to the highest degree possible to mitigate the impact and possible spread of COVID-19. However, this is important. I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee that the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I want to believe it is, but I can't guarantee it. We can only do what we can with the parameters we were given to do the best we can. And you have my word and our team's word and the board's commitment to do that. But we have to operate within the parameters that we are afforded by the law and the Department of Education. And that's what we're doing right now. So I understand everyone's concern, but this notion that somehow should someone get ill, and people did get ill, and unfortunately people in our community passed away over the last year and a half from COVID. It's horrific. And anyone that affected, I have great sympathy for their families. But to somehow allude to that, that's our responsibility or that we're at fault for that, no, I can't ascribe to that.
I would ask Bharvi Dashmina to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a concern regarding elective placement, not necessarily COVID safety procedures. Throughout the summer and actually fourth quarter of the last school year, I had been in contact with both my guidance counselor and the supervisor at JP for the arts department. And the conclusion has been that even though I haven't taken the dance 1 and 2 elective, that I would be permitted to take the dance 3 elective. However, my transcript would not reflect that I would have been taking a dance 3 honors class. And I have gotten nowhere with that.
Dr. Bragan, I think this is something that she should email you to you.
Yeah, I think an individual scheduling and
Yeah.
grading situation should be dealt with. If you could at the principal level, if that you didn't meet with satisfaction, or you could send it to us, that we would address that. I don't want to address
Yeah.
that publicly.
Yeah. I saw Santo who had raised his hand, and I know that he had also sent a detailed questionnaire to the Board of Education. Santo, can you unmute yourself? I don't see him. Okay, let's move to the next one. RUPE, can you unmute yourself?
Can I respond to something in the
Sure,
chat?
sure.
You know,
Go ahead, Dr.
there's some
Bragan.
discussion there regarding my children, and when it's really not appropriate to mention my children in these conversations. However, somebody asked, so I will share my children. My children got the vaccines as soon as they were able to do that. They're in college right now. I have one in graduate school and 2 in undergraduate school. Again, because somebody mentioned it, I wouldn't say this to anyone else because my own personal beliefs are not how we lead the school or in my role as superintendent, but because somebody put it out there as a family, and my personal choice was to have my children vaccinated as soon as they were able to. And as soon as they were allowed to go back in person, I sent my children. I'm not saying for any of you to do that last year when we had that option, but that was my choice. And I would ask people to respect my family and refrain from mentioning my children because they have nothing to do with the Edison Public Schools. Thank you.
Yeah. Santo, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hi, Sivi. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I think we sent a list of questions as you already mentioned, right? So maybe some of the questions already asked by other parents and concerned parents, but there might be a lot of distinct, unique questions which are not covered. If possible, go through the lists once again for you. There are a few questions like we categorically segregated all the different steps, like starting from the entering into the bus to getting inside the class and then exit the school. So we try to cover whatever the possible possibilities there for kids getting infected or something, on how we can address all these concerns. So
I think, Santu, a lot of those questions were answered, and the ones that are not answered, we'll address it through, maybe online, frequently asked questions, that kind of a thing. So we got very little time left. So let's quickly go to the next question. And please, if your question has already been answered, please don't repeat the same question. We want to capture as many topics as we can. So the next person is RUPE. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So I would like to refer back to what the superintendent was saying and just now about as much as we can. So it is quite evident that our Edison schools are overcrowded. It is quite evident that you cannot maintain 6-foot distance or even a 3-foot distance in the classes or the cafeteria or the hallways. So at this point, when the people responsible for maintaining the safety in the schools are just saying we are doing as much as we can, it's like as if they are raising their hands up and saying, oh, you know what, we don't know what we are going to do. Let's, whatever happens, and once something bad happens, then we can take the action. So that's my concern, biggest concern, that nobody's trying to address how it can be more optimized, how it can, the 6-feet distance can be maintained in all the offices, the state offices, or even the private sector. People are allowed to work from home remotely, or they're making schedules to come back to office in such a manner that they don't, that they can maintain the 6 foot distances. So why can't the school try figuring out something? And I'm not suggesting again remote schooling, but it can, if we have the will, we can do, we can have the way. But it seems like, you know, you have this staple answer: we have to abide by the law. We are doing as much as we can, and that's it.
Thank you, Rup, for your question. I think please do send us suggestions that you might have. We'll be happy to look at all the suggestions we get. Next person is Prasad. Can you please unmute yourself? Prasad, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, sorry. I have 2 questions.
Your volume is very low. Can you speak up, please?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have 2 questions. First of all, high schools have a limit for how many absences students have permitted, which, so like, do the COVID-19 related sick days, will they be included or not included in that count? First of all, and then second, do kids who do contract COVID have to present a positive report to the school before going on sick leave?
I think we already discussed that question. I mean, when if your kid has COVID, then obviously, you know, for as long as the kid is feeling sick, I mean, the general quarantine day is 14 days. And you don't have to, I mean, I think it would be best for you to kind of watch the recording of this video, which should be available tomorrow. We already answered this question, right, Dr. Bragan?
I would agree. Yes.
Mr. Dhaki, can you please unmute yourself?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, thank you for this opportunity to ask this question, really. So I understand that there is a limitation and non-virtual option it cannot be offered because of the law. I understand that, but there are many people who has real concern about sending unvaccinated kid to school. So I believe boards should step forward and make a guide for people who wanted to do some other means like private online schooling and other options really. Basically, I have real concern. My son is in 6th grade honors, but if I'm not putting my kid to school because of this COVID concern and no option, how the system will treat my son when he will join back the school when there is a vaccination available for him, or next year 7th grade when he joined. So what is the policy out here for evaluating the kid? That's one concern. And is it possible that board can make some help guidance for people who are really concerned? I understand law, you are following the law, but still there is something need to be done when so many people are concerned about. We cannot sit on idle on just saying that this is the law. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dhaki.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible, but we'll try and see if we are able to put any resources online. Anything, Virginia, you want to add, or Carol? Anything you want to speak about at this point? Okay.
The only thing I would say, I just want to encourage everybody, if you are having problems with enrollment or transportation or whatever, please go on that parent help desk. You know, I don't know what the glitch was with a couple of people, but, you know, please do it. The turnaround time is usually 24 hours. So not to take advantage of it is really sad. Please don't give up on it. Just make sure you do it.
So we were supposed to end this meeting at 7 o'clock. It is 7 o'clock, but we're going to extend it by another 15 minutes. Sorry, it was supposed to end at 8 o'clock. So we're going to extend it by another 15 minutes so we can answer maximum questions. So please don't repeat questions so that we can get to maximum new topics. The next person is Prashant. Can you please unmute yourself?
Hi, thank you. For elementary school kids, if the weather days are good, is it possible that we can do part of the schooling outside, or at least have a little more breaks in between classes, or we can schedule it like that so that they are able to breathe. Because I go to office, New York City, I can't sit there wearing mask all day. I don't know how the kids are gonna take that like for 2-3 hours in continuation.
Thank you. Do we have any mask breaks and things like
Yeah,
that?
we
outside?
would definitely do that. We did that for the students that were in person over the last, a year when we were in school as well. But
Many,
yes,
many teachers take advantage of the
Yeah.
beautiful days going outside.
we
with
will
the
definitely
students.
support and encourage to be outside as much as the weather permits.
Thank you, Dr. Bragan. The next person is Jean. Can you please unmute yourself?
Good evening. I'm not sure, Dr. Bragan or somebody else. So we live in North Edison. We live about a little less than a mile from school. We don't normally qualify for Edison buses, but school district always had an arrangement with Draper Bus Company where we could pay, it was, let's say, reasonably, somewhat reasonable amount, and therefore kid could get to the school. Now we already, my wife reached out to multiple people, emails, phone calls. We were advised to contact Draper Company directly. So it seems like neither school district, it looks like school basically has zero responsibility for getting that transportation arranged. And by contacting school bus directly, they basically say, we don't have anything, we don't know, we don't plan anything, maybe. So on the normal days, and I understand the distance rule, so on the normal days when weather is nice, kid can get to school, it's walkable distance. But when it's hard rain or snow, it's absolutely unreasonable to expect for kids to get, and there's a lot of kids, there's a couple of developments right where I live. It's a little bit unreasonable to expect them to get there. And especially I'm concerned about when it's snow, because half of the people who live between us and John Adams School don't ever clean snow from the sidewalks. So can you guys please take ownership of at least arranging that private transportation?
Thank you, Jean, for your question.
Jean, I appreciate your question. If I can respond to that,
Yeah,
Mrs.
sure,
Meyer.
yeah.
We're having significant issues with transportation. We have about 425 bus routes, and we have a variety of vendors that provide the majority of those routes for our students. And most of those routes are for those that are remote instruction. If you're at high school, it's 2.5 miles from school. If you're elementary, it's 2 miles. And we have a legal obligation to provide transportation for those students. And many of our vendors, I got a notice this afternoon before this meeting, they're having trouble getting their drivers to provide that service that are for those students that are required by law. Subscription busing is an option and many people have it. And if we have availability and there's an option, we will definitely provide it and support it. Jean, I think as you said, you actually reached out to Dapper Buses individually or as a community, and they basically said we can't really help because they don't have the support now. We're trying, we will continue to try, but there is a significant shortage of bus drivers. Our vendors don't have the drivers they need to provide the services that we are legally compelled to provide our students. And we're really trying our best to get that service provided. Obviously, that's not something I would want to be working on 2 days before the start of school, but that's the world we live in. Due to COVID, due to extenuating circumstances and a lot of things that are going on in the world right now, there's a shortage. I can't make somebody appear that can drive a bus. We're doing all we can and we'll continue to try to support you. And maybe it won't be in place for September, but we'll continue to work and try to get it in place for when we do have that inclement weather. We're doing the best we can on that. But as I said, unless we can make bus drivers appear, I can't fix that problem by Wednesday.
So I understand, just a little bit of a follow-up. So I understand the difficulty of the situation. Something that I think is at least within your responsibility, ability to coordinate, perhaps if you guys don't have it solved by the time snow comes, can you at least coordinate with Edison Police Department that they go around in the near schools and enforce their existing rules that people clean the sidewalks? Because I tried a few years back, I tried to contact school district, township, everybody pointed to the police department, apparently is responsible to enforce it, but they don't do it.
I mean, if you call the non-emergency number of the police department,
Yes,
someone should come
try
by.
that.
We're going to go to the next person now, Sashi, because she has a question that has not been asked yet, and she has a question on special needs. Sashi, why don't you unmute yourself?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. So I have questions about kids who have IEPs and special needs, and another question with kids with medical conditions. So for kids with medical conditions, what is the time frame for them to submit the documents that allows them to study from home, sorry, and how long does it take to process? And before that happens, since obviously the kids can't attend school, what happens to them? And regarding the attendance and things. And second thing is, what happens with the kids with IEPs and special needs? I know someone mentioned it's 10 hours a week. So is it like 5 hours regular school and 5 hours of special like IEP program thing? And what about the OT speech or like the special classes they get?
Thank you for your question, Sashi. Dr. Bragan.
Yeah, the questions regarding with students with IEPs, you are correct. They would, if they're quarantined, would be provided 10 hours of home instruction. And however that breaks out or works out best for the families to coordinate, when we used to do it in person, we'd coordinate with the family when we could do that best, suited around the family needs, when the students were there, when the parents were there, so on and so forth. Obviously, this would be a virtual home instruction, so it's a little bit different. But regarding those related services of speech therapy, OT, and PT to the greatest extent possible, they could be provided as well via remote setting as part of that home instruction, in addition to those 10 hours as required in the student's individual education program. For those students that do have a medical condition that would warrant home instruction, again, I think I mentioned it earlier, there's a process involved there where the documentation from the physician of the student would be submitted to the school. That documentation is then evaluated and reviewed by one of our school physicians. Determination is made, and then that's set up. We try to do it as quickly as we can. Dr. Alderelli, am I missing anything? No. Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to ask Vihan now to ask his question, because I'm just looking at people who have a question that has not been asked. So if you have a question that has not been asked, please put your name in the chat, and we just have a couple of minutes left. So Vihan, why don't you unmute yourself? He has a question on orientation, I believe.
Hello, good evening. This is Vihan's mom. We have already enrolled my son for a kindergarten this year on 18th of August. And Dr. Bragan, I have already sent you an email just now. And tomorrow is an orientation. And still we did not hear anything about whether he got an admission or not. So what is your suggestion that we still can go to an orientation at 10 o'clock tomorrow at his school, Lincoln Elementary School, or we are not allowed? They will not entertain us, or they will not answer the questions which the class teacher name and all the information that we want, because we did not hear anything about whether he has been enrolled or not.
So, can I just quickly interject? Anything that's particular to your case, and if it's regarding one child, just email that question. Use the parent help desk, as Virginia said. You should be able to hear back from us pretty rapidly. Let's use the forum to ask questions which are kind of questions that are kind of universal. So why don't you just email that issue, because it's pertaining to your own child? Am I correct? That's
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna go to Amy. Amy, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Yeah, I just want to just kind of get out there. I'm on this call as a parent and as a teacher. I teach kindergarten in the district. I teach special education students. I want the parents to know that today when I was in the classroom for 6 hours on my own time, not being paid, there was not one moment that did not go through my co-teacher, my head as to what we were doing in the classroom and how it would be of the utmost safety for the children. I'm not even thinking about myself as a teacher or as a person, but teachers are out there with nothing on their mind other than how can we keep these children safe? How am I placing my desks or my tables or my chairs? How am I going to do read alouds? How am I going to do class discussions? 6 hours of my own time without being paid to figure out how to best and with the most safety, keep the children safe above even my own safety. So I want parents to please know the teachers are not just going in there without any of these regards in their mind. There are masks, extra masks we bought on our own money to fit the children when their masks get soiled or break. We have sanitizer, we have wipes, we have everything to try to keep the students as safe as possible. And I just need parents to know that the teachers are not going in, not following protocols or above and beyond protocols. And it's a little disheartening as a parent to have other parents out there think that the teachers are not taking the students' safety first.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing your thoughts, Amy. Thank you so much. This is the last person we're going to take, and this is Shrikant and Sonali. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear
Can you
you.
hear us? Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight, all of you. I really appreciate your time. Like everybody else, I'm concerned about the children's safety. And, like last year, when it was a hybrid model for the middle school, like I heard from, from the children that, like the teachers, they would actually, take their mask out and talk, especially like if it's a French class or when it's a pronunciation and things like that. And I want to know, like, like what safety measures you guys are taking this year, for that not to happen. And, concerning the, the safety of the children as well as for the teachers, how this is going to be taken care.
Dr. Bragan.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is, we will ensure that our staff are wearing masks in the schools as well as our visitors and our students, as is part of the executive order number 251. When we were in session last year, we didn't have, as far as it got to my level, that there were concerns with either staff or students complying with that. If that is an issue, we will certainly address that. And we want to do all that we can to, mitigate the possible spread of the COVID-19 to the best of our ability.
So just want to add that, if you have any individual problems or issues, please do use the parent help desk. It's new this year. We have not been able to take many questions, but please do feel free to email the board and we're going to try and get your questions answered. All our emails are on the website. If you go to the school website, you'll see a tab for Board of Education. And there you will see all the board members on this committee. And again, just so you know, the board members on this committee are Virginia White, Carol Badowski, Elizabeth Conway, and Shiva Madhukar. So please feel free to email any of the board, the Community Relations Committee, and we'll also try and put the questions on the website as frequently asked questions. So in case we've missed your question, please feel free to do that. And any closing last thoughts, Virginia?
Just have a very good night and a good first day of school too.
Carol?
Yes, basically have a great year of school and first day, but for everybody.
Elizabeth.
I wish this becomes a very good school year, and I just ask that all parents be cognizant of the fact that the children are being kept safe in school, and we need to just be as cautious both in and out of school to keep our children as safe as possible.
Once again, I want to apologize if I missed any question or if any question was brought to our attention that was not addressed. Obviously, we have less time and we can't answer all questions. And I'd like to thank Dr. Bragan and Dr. Alderelli once again for making themselves available. As I said at the beginning, they're not obligated to attend this meeting, but then, they made themselves available to meet with everyone today. And also to all committee members. Also, the next meeting of the Community Relations Committee will be on October 7th. It's a Thursday at 7 o'clock. And so please write it down. If you want to get added or want to get a personal invitation to the meeting, then please feel free to email me, shivi.madhukar@edison.k12.nj.us, and I'll send you a meeting invite. And that's about it for today. So have a great night and a great school year. Thank you everyone once again for attending this meeting.
And I'd just like to say, if anybody has a great concern, our next Board of Education meeting is September 23rd to be held at JP Stevens, or the action meeting on September 28th. So 2 more open meetings where concerns can be brought. And hopefully between emails, these meetings and Board of Education meetings, we reach out and help one another get through this horrific time.
Thank you. Bye.